welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining from wherever you are. And today's panel is specifically provided as part of the Women Returners programme for the Scottish Government, which Virtual Internships is delivering. We're delighted to be joined today by three great panelists who will give their own self-introductions in a minute, but they all have great wealth of experience in not only this journey of returning to work, but also particularly today leveraging remote work in the employability space and how to make the most of remote work, and also looking at that from a diverse audience angle. You know, how can we overcome some of the challenges, some of the most common barriers that are in place? It's a great discussion. We're going to have Mirta, who is our head of employability at Virtual Internships, handling the questions and moderating the panel. And once we've answered a few pre-prepared set questions, we're going to open it up to the audience, and we'd strongly we'd love any questions in the chat function or in the Q&A. Actually, I'll be watching both of those. And I'll be happy to pose those questions to the panelists. And I've got a few that were submitted ahead of time as well to go through. So I think without further ado, I will pass over to Mirta to introduce the panelists. But thank you very much from me for giving up your time today.
Thank you, Ed, and thank you everyone for being here today. And special thanks to our speakers today, to Jonathan, Ann, and Femi, who have joined us here, to share this time with you and everything they have to share. So as Ed explained, we're going to have some questions first, and then the questions you submit through the Q&A or the chat. So without further ado, I would love our speakers to introduce themselves so we get to know them. So Ann, would you like to start, please?
Hi, everyone. Lovely to meet you. My name is Ann Nkune, and I'm the founder and director of a community interest company called Bloomsbury Beginnings. And I work with women founders, women who are starting their own business or thinking about career change. And I do sort of strategy facilitation. So I get people together in a room, get them to kind of share their skills and experience. So kind of a similar sort of proposition to virtual internships, but with the idea of people potentially starting their own thing. And I do it from the perspective of being a mum. That's why I'm sitting in my daughter's messy bedroom, because I'm kind of demonstrating here the reality of remote working, certainly for me. My journey has been that, as a mum, I kind of had a big career change of direction. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that during the session today. So.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Anne. Jonathan.
Hello, I'm Jonathan Brill. My company is Eduvate. That's eduvate.biz, and we're an online careers fair. And we have been an online careers fair for some time, before the pandemic, during it, and now during it. And what we're trying to do is understand employability and how it's changed. And we have been working with virtual internships now for over a year and have had a number of internships with them and ongoing. A tremendous business.
Thank you, Jonathan. Femi.
Oh, hello, everybody. It's even though I can't see you, it's fantastic to meet you. My name's Femi Bola. I've worked in the area of employability for over 20 years now, mostly with students and graduates, but also with women returners. I ran a women returners project about almost 20 years ago now, so it was kind of a new thing to do then. I've worked, I suppose, area of working has always been with what I call the unusual suspects, people who maybe find it difficult to access learning or access work. So people from sometimes diverse backgrounds, women returners. I've worked with refuse collectors. who want to learn how to read, and as I say, people who want to get degrees. And I've worked with naughty boys who have been very naughty at school and then need to access learning. So a whole range of people, as I say, what they have in common is they need to access learning, and they need to learn how to navigate the workplace and to improve their employability skills and understanding of what employers want from them and what they have to offer, because we definitely all have something amazing to offer as individuals.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Femi. Okay, so we'll start with our questions, and I will start with our first one, which is what kind of remote opportunities are out there, and how and where can we find them? Anne, what would you like to share?
So I suspect I'm not the best expert given the panel that we've got here, but certainly my experience is working with a kind of 500 plus women over the last few years who are raising children and dealing with that sort of complexity of trying to sometimes under very difficult circumstances, trying to develop a work portfolio of one sort or another. So they are trying to start their own businesses. Often they'll be combining that often with trying to find paid part-time work, and certainly through their experience and mine, the kind of remote working possibilities are there are quite a lot around the self-employment piece, and certainly those remote working opportunities have been, we've had to be exploring them, most of us, for quite a long time, and now there are a few more around. But certainly what I've tried to help people do is to think about creating businesses for themselves, freelancing or startup businesses for themselves, which they can do flexibly. So certainly what they can do online, which is massively increased. Most of the people that I work with have some social impact side of what they do. So thinking about raising funds through raising income through direct customers, but also raising funds through grants, and there are a whole range of interesting opportunities around that if you're looking to develop a social enterprise proposition, as a lot of the women that I'm working with do. So yeah, so certainly just the possibility of delivering your programs online as well as face to face is something that I spend quite a lot of time working with women to create and develop and deliver.
Thank you. Femi, what can you tell us about what different opportunities out there with remote working? Yeah, how can we find them?
I think that obviously the pandemic has changed employers' views about remote working. That I think they've become now much more trusting of their employees, because when I was a manager, I must admit, as managers, we were resistant to having people working from home. We wanted people to be in the office. We felt that we had to see people face to face. However, now employers realize that employees can be much more productive when they're working from home. They can have a much better work-life balance, which obviously makes them more productive. And when I looked online, there were a lot of opportunities, both full-time and part-time, where employers say work anywhere, which is amazing, which means that opportunities that weren't available to certain people because they couldn't travel, they might have had a disability or something like that, it just means that the whole workplace has opened up now, and employers have a completely different mindset. They're also open to hybrid working, so you spend a couple of days in the office or a day in the office and the rest of the time at home. So I think that's really a fantastic opportunity. And also I've found out there are things called returnships, which I didn't really know existed before, and there's a whole website just about returnships. And so companies are actually and if people haven't seen them, they're called paid returnships, and they're just aimed at women returners. And the companies say which areas they want to recruit women, and they're aimed at, as I say, women returners, which is amazing. And they're paid, which is fantastic, because obviously if you've got a family, you can't afford to just do things for free. So I think that that's, for some of you, that would be a good way in. Some of the returnships are for 6 weeks, some of them are a bit longer, and therefore it gives you the opportunity to get that taste of returning to work in a safe way, because the employer knows that you are a returner, and some of the companies look really interesting that you could work for. So as I say, there's a whole website on returnships.
Wow, that is great, Femi. Thank you so much for sharing that. We're definitely going to check that. And
Yep.
so our next question is, okay, we have this new opportunity. How can we really prepare for remote work? What concrete skills and mindsets do we need for remote work? And what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so this is sort of my core business, really, in that I do try to help women think through the kind of the practical and the mindset process to be, to be able to take up these opportunities, because actually you are trying to square a circle a lot of the time. You do, it's naive to say that, it's straightforward to remote work when, there are lots of other pressures around. So I guess in terms of what, that actually when women get together to talk about this, there's a lot of good strategies, a lot of recognizing of what you're already doing, which is often very impressive, but you forget to to acknowledge it. So I think there are some really good coaching techniques to help you to think through that, what you're already doing well. What you're already, quite often, work is a broad term, isn't it? And we, manage complex organizations by being parents, usually mothers. We also often are going out and doing roles in, it might be pro bono volunteering roles, or whatever people are doing. They are often doing very good preparation for remote working anyway, in what they're currently practicing. So in terms of starting up your own business, I really encourage people to do something called lean canvas business modeling, which allows them to think through strategically, how they develop their business proposition. I also get people to do I use as a facilitator something called appreciative inquiry, which I'm just wild about. I think it's just a brilliant way for individuals and for organizations to to plan optimistically and to have a dream and get steps towards that dream. And then there's the kind of practical logistical stuff about remote working, which is again, there can be big barriers to this. You do need decent IT and internet, and a lot of the women that I'm working with, that is a massive barrier, and we have to, people have to come up with ways to overcome those things. So you do need the hardware, you do need a kind of, just getting to know the software, the sort of standard stuff that everybody needs to have. You need to have your LinkedIn profile, you need to be confident to get on the Zoom. I'm afraid we all need to learn how to use Slack. I've got 50 women who I'm saying, come on, you've got to be using not just WhatsApp, you've all got to be now using Slack. So, there are certain tools that we need, to get our heads around, that are sort of, standard workplace tools. And don't sit with your child's messy bedroom behind you. Normally I'm doing this because we're in a safe space. If I'm running a facilitating a session for a big group of leaders, I don't, I have a big different sort of backdrop.
Excellent, thank you. Jonathan, what can you tell us? How can we prepare for remote work? What concrete skills and mindset can help us with these?
A lot of very important stuff has been covered by the previous two speakers. I'm concerned to stress that my experience is with digital nomads. that the core thought process which encourages young people to work with our organization is that they are willing to take their digital skills and work in a nomadic way, work from anywhere. Have a look at the art behind me. That is not my taste, but it is art based in a room where I am in Tenerife, where I'm taking some relaxation and rest and taking a bit of time out to work with virtual internships. Tenerife, the economy of Tenerife is all around the tourist. It's all around bringing people in to sit in Tenerife. And these days, currently, they are advertising for remote workers. They are wanting people who are quite happy to work where there is connectivity, where there is basic Wi-Fi, to bring their hardware. Yeah, we can all get in touch with Slack in time, maybe. But the most important thing is connectivity and a mindset that is willing to sit yourself down and just get on with the program. I've so far through Eduvate employed 6 women coming back, sometimes coming out of courses, sometimes coming back. Shilpa, Shug, Latifa, Ilham, Carly, Danon, they have all been remote workers with me. They have a different mindset from each other, but they are comfortable essentially, or become more comfortable working in a space where there is connectivity first, and then they bring a different mindset into that.
Perfect, thank you. So our next question. So how might remote work be leveraged, in particular from those with diverse backgrounds? Do you have any thoughts on the intersection between remote work, diversity, and women returners that you would like to share? Femi?
Well, I think remote working in terms of diversity and inclusion can be helpful. It means that if people who maybe would have been not able to access a particular opportunity because it was quite a long way from where they lived and they couldn't afford the travel, now have access to that opportunity. So in terms of economic access, it can really help with that. Also, in terms of employers looking at people who they may not have originally considered because of location, it's giving them access to people not just all around the UK, but all around the world. And I think that is fantastic. Also, in terms of just small things like having to dress up every day to go to work. You don't have to do that anymore. So in terms of not having so much money, you can save on clothing because you just have to make yourself presentable for the camera. In terms of flexibility as well, most employers now have changed their attitude and they just want to get the work done in a particular time frame, and it doesn't have to be 9 till 5, which if you have children gives you that flexibility in terms of being able to organise your childcare around your work, which is also fantastic. Also, I think that in terms of the makeup of teams, now, because employers can spread their wings in terms of recruitment, it means that people end up working in teams that they may not have had access to before, that are mixed. Look at Murta, all that way away in South America, and we're working today. I may not previously have met somebody from South America, and if we were working together, it'd give me the opportunity to understand a bit about South American culture, and for her to also understand about me as a Black person living in the UK and have grown up in the UK, what my experiences are. So it gives you the opportunity to really expand your horizons. And also, it can take out the fear factor. I'm gonna make a confession here. I remember my first job, I started off as a scientist and I was the first Black person they'd ever employed. And going to that workplace was really daunting. I mean, I was basically the only Black in the village. And actually working in remotely can take away that fear factor of, I'm not really sure about the workplace I'm going to work in. I'm not really sure about all the other people there. I could be in a minority. Well, actually, you don't, as I say, the computer, the virtual working could take away that fear and give you that confidence and make you feel, yes, I've got something to contribute. I don't have to be so scared by environment. Walking into that corporate place in the middle of a city is, that fear can be taken away and you can build your confidence online. So those are some of the things. Yeah.
Thank you, Femi. I'm really happy to have met you too through remote opportunities. That is great. Anne, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, I just feel like I need to reflect a lot of what you've just said, Femi. I mean, that ability to be in a safe space with other people virtually, to really, have that strength in diversity, is a potential, huge potential around that. And we know that there are also massive challenges, but I think that, you've put it in its best light that actually you can, companies, if they are as they should be, include, really wanting to be inclusive, this is a huge opportunity for them, isn't it? That, that actually they don't need to, to have people doing massive long commutes and burning themselves out in that process. They can give a more comfortable space to people who rightly feeling like they're potentially going to be, discriminated against by people, by people's kind of preset views about the color of people's skin or their economic status. All those things can be mitigated, I think, with the right virtual work environment. And I think there is massive scope for doing that. It's just we need employers to be, as forward thinking as you're describing, Femi, and for us who are coming into those workplaces, to feel a degree of confidence, as we should do, because frankly, we've, probably individually, anybody who's going into the workplace having had that experience of feeling excluded for whatever reason, they're making a big, they've already done a lot of great work, haven't they, to get through that door, and they should feel very confident because of that. So yeah, I think as a potential for companies, it's huge, isn't it, for them to be able
Absolutely.
to do that.
Thank you. Jonathan, would you like to add anything?
From an employer's perspective, think of the richness that this has given us in terms of opportunity to access cultures and markets to benefit our business, which is, after all, why I'm in business, is to grow my business. We've worked with young women in the UAE, in Saudi, in the US, and next week I'm interviewing a Maori woman from New Zealand. Think of the advantages that has given this employer to open up these markets for our small business. It's a fantastic thing, and it would not be happening to our business were it not for remote working. Quite simple.
Yeah, and that leads me to my next question, which is how can we take advantage of remote work, and how can remote work be best leveraged for those who are considering returning to work? Femi?
I think in terms of, it can be a bit daunting when you're going back to work. And I was thinking about that, since you asked me. But one of the things I do feel that preparing yourself for going into remote work, there are quite a lot of opportunities to do that now. I was looking online, and there are quite a few LinkedIn courses that are free, and there are Open University courses that are free that help you bridge this gap from when you're returning to work. I saw one free Open University program called Developing Career Resilience, which I thought was really something interesting, that we're in going back to work, that could be quite an interesting course to take. There was a whole range of courses. There were courses on commercial awareness. So there are all these programs. As I say, Open University is a great resource. Open University is a great resource, so that you can actually prepare yourself for, in terms of building your confidence for remote working and those opportunities. And also, I think getting involved in networks, which you probably started to do now, networks of people that are in similar situations to you, I think is quite useful. When I was like a new parent before this virtual world, I formed a network of like mothers who could help me pick up my daughter when I was running late, and I would pick up their children when they were running late. So I think there'll be opportunities also to form a network. Oh, sorry about that. A network of women who could help. You can help each other in terms of sharing learning, sharing experiences, supporting each other. So from this program that you're on now, you can form a network which could help you take advantage of remote working. Also in terms of if people see opportunities, you can share them. If there are tips and tricks that you've learned, you can share those. So I would say forming, even though you're remote, forming a network to support you, I think is quite important, and taking advantages of the technology that's available now, Zoom, Teams, that help you form online networks a lot easier than before, even WhatsApp groups that can allow you to keep in touch.
Definitely, thank you. A lot of really interesting pieces of advice. Thank you very much. Jonathan, would you like to share how can we take advantage of remote work? Well, you have shared a little bit, but perhaps a little bit, anything else you want to share and the benefits of remote work?
I think the marketplace, the workplace is changing. I think it's getting better. I'll give you an example. I have a friend based in Edinburgh who has applied for a job in Madrid, and they are perfectly happy for that to be the situation. Yes, he'll have to pop over to Madrid once or twice a year to talk to people. But for the most part, not only are they happy, they would prefer him to be working in Edinburgh, doing all that thing. The point Femi made about building up your virtual networks can't be overstressed. That's an important side of things. But this work-life balance thing has always been a bone of contention with me. I'm never been sure that working is not life, or I'm living now only because I'm not working. I've never been sure of that dichotomy. I'm more concerned watching women come and work with me about a series of trade-offs. It's a trade-off that they're working day by day, working really difficult ways to work with children, to work with other things that are going on. And these trade-offs are what it's all about. Today, McKinsey, the research company, has published some interesting stuff on that. And I think that remote working is one of the better ways to manage these trade-offs.
Excellent. Yeah, well, our next question is about precisely what challenges can we expect to find when remote working, and how can we overcome them? Anne?
Yeah, so I mean, actually just carrying on from what you've just said, Jonathan, and Femi's point as well about networks, I think, you know, the big challenges are those boundaries, aren't there? And I hate the work life, like I hate mumpreneur and I hate work-life balance. I think there are certain things that actually, you know, you do have to manage. Those trade-offs is a good phrase for them, and the boundaries. And I really like a tool called the Wheel of Life, where you sort of you're explicit about that, and you kind of work out where you can make small shifts, you know, through in each of kind of 8 quadrangles around things. And I think that kind of exercise is worth doing, but actually, you know, the big challenge usually are very practical ones around being able to logistically work when you're dealing with what we like to call in the business the mother load, isn't it? That you know, you are, as Femi described, you know, you are probably the person who's going to get in trouble with school if you're turning up late, and you're probably the person who's going to get in trouble with your employer, and you know, and you're probably also, you know, meant to be doing everything else around the household. So actually managing that, remote working can help it, but it can also muddle it, because you can be doing that all the time, couldn't you? You know, the remote work thing, certainly, you know, there's a big thing about women becoming digital social media managers. Well, you know, that's that can be all consuming if you don't put boundaries around it, and you know, make sure that you're not underselling yourself constantly. There's the isolation of remote working, I think, you know, which is a reality. And you know, shameless plug, I run a virtual co-working session for women on first thing on a Monday morning to get them, to help them kind of get tasks done, you know, make sure that their intentions that they've set they will do during the week, but also it's a chance, you know, during our virtual coffee break for them to do what they would do in a normal workspace, and just get, you know, have 15 minutes to talk to each other. So I do think you have to, you know, you do have to overcome isolation, and also the recognition thing, you know, that actually recognizing the value that you're giving to others with the quality of the work that you're doing. It's a real, you know, it's a huge challenge for the women that I work with who've been undermined, you know, who are undermined constantly in other aspects of their lives, and actually being able to say, yeah, I'm giving, you know, I've probably got 80% of what the bloke who applied for this job's got, and I'm worried about the 20% I haven't got, you know. But you know, that's sort of making sure that you are actually being recognised and paid properly for the work that you're doing is, yeah, easy said by done, I know. Yeah.
Femi, what are your thoughts on the challenges we can experience working remotely and how we can overcome them?
Well, for me, I think one of the challenges was dealing with the technology. I mean, I'd never used Zoom, I'd never used Teams before, and I had to learn how to use these things to my advantage. And as I say, for me personally, that was kind of a bit of a challenge, but it obviously is something that you can overcome. And I think I was a bit scared of the technology, Zoom being seen on screen, and how it would look. But as I say, I've had to challenge my own confidence in that area and get over it. And also for me, I'm a real people person. So it was a massive challenge to suddenly not be in a actual room with my students, or an actual room with my graduates, or to be talking to an audience, whether it be 20 or 200. I loved that connection with a live connection with people. So I've had to overcome that feeling of not seeing people face to face, and think about how for them how it may not feel so comfortable for me, but it may be more advantageous for the people that I'm working with and dealing with. And also, I suppose, the advantage for me of not always having to travel, and not always, so kind of balancing the things that I probably, for my particular personality, virtual working didn't suit, compared to the advantages that it's brought me in terms of, say, you know, maybe being able to easily take part in a panel like this today with people I would have normally not met. So I think mentally it's sometimes easy to concentrate on the negatives, but I think it's getting that balance of, yes, this is the thing that I've got to deal with, for me, Zoom and Teams, and then how do I do that? And then how do I actually look at the bigger picture in terms of how I can contribute, what I'm learning, and the people that I'm meeting, and how I'm helping others, you know? So I think that's been, for me, the learning point.
Excellent, thank you. And Jonathan, in your experience, or perhaps to you, what was the most challenging when adapting to remote work, or what have you observed that challenges are and how we can overcome them.
Yeah, I don't want to bore everybody with my struggles with technology, but yeah, certainly them, Femi, certainly them. Two things really that I want to stress. One is that there's a new thing that people who have been accustomed to remote working are now going back into hybrid working. Mm-hmm. And a lot of them are finding that a considerable challenge, because remote working does provide some kind of safe space in all the ways that we've been talking about. And then to move back into the workplace, back into office politics of a different sort and so on, is bringing a kind of fear factor. I think the other thing is this, for us in Eduvate, is that we've seen, because of the pandemic, a lot of people not doing well financially. Now, some people have, no question. If you've been a mask making person, company, whatever, you've made a lot of money over the last few years. Goodness me, not everyone's in the same boat, but a lot of people are. And so we're stressing financial literacy when you are negotiating your next stage in life, remote working and so on, because a lot of companies are trying to say remote working, well, that's going to be cheaper, therefore we'll pay people less and so on. And again, to revert to the word that we're using earlier on, trade-offs, you're going to have to look to see how much money you got coming in versus not traveling, versus not having to pay for lunches in quite the same way and so on. So developing your own sense of budgeting, developing a new kind of life planning mechanism within all of that seems to us in Eduvate to be quite important, really very important. And that's where we're putting a lot of work in.
Thank you. And talking a little bit about trade-offs, how can we disconnect at the end of the day? How can we separate? We've talked about this life-work balance, yes, no. What are your thoughts on how we can remote work and still make it function? What are your thoughts on this, Anne?
I just realized I answered this question last time. I'm going to go with digital sunsets are a good idea. I think, actually that there are, having, an intention at least to have some space where you're not using your remote, you're not using those tools that you're having to use during the day for remote working. Just to, reiterate sort of, let's reframe that work-life balance thing and just make sure that you are kind of hitting your satisfaction targets in a number of different areas. And those for women returners are often making sure there's enough time to yourself. That might be reading literally a chapter of a book, doing 10 minutes of exercise, that you keep sacrosanct outside of your family time. But just being able to make sure that you are, and actually, if you're really lucky, you get to be as passionate and excited about your work as I am most of the time, and I don't want to necessarily switch off from it all the time. I want to, that's quite often an escape and something that I love to do. But I do, just being able to make sure that I'm not disrupting my sleep by looking at my customers' emails at 11 o'clock at night. It's kind of it's as basic as that, really. And again, a lot of the women that I work with, particularly if they're doing remote, delivering virtually, it's very easy to slip into just being on screen kind of all the time, and that's not great for our sleep patterns or general sense of well-being, really.
Thank you. Femi, what are your thoughts on this? Or perhaps,
Sorry, I think that I think the same self-discipline that you need to be a successful virtual worker is because you do have to be disciplined in terms of making it work. It isn't just a magic bullet that suddenly we can all work successfully from home or from a a remote location, we have to have that self-discipline around setting ourselves targets, getting through the work, having our own strategies for successfully dealing with the workload that we've signed up to deliver, albeit in a more flexible way. I think you seem to need to have the same self-discipline in terms of managing the rest of your time so that you don't feel overwhelmed, you do feel relaxed, you do feel that that if you are trading off, the trade-off is in a way that suits your personality, suits what you've signed up for, the work or the job, and then allows you the headspace to enjoy other things, whether that's your family or reading or gardening or whatever. So it's kind of like, for me, getting self-disciplined in every area and understanding what it is you've taken on, understanding also what success looks like for you. So sometimes when you're in the environments that we're all used to, success was kind of quite clear because of the politics of the office or the structure of the organization we were working for. But I think when you're working remotely, it's kind of, what does success look like? Is it success? I had a to-do list like you are at work and I got through it, or is success I successfully managed to balance certain things today? So I think that taking that step back and thinking about what working remotely in its entirety means to me, what it gives to me, and what I need to manage, I think is something that people really need to do.
Thank you. That's really helpful, definitely. So we have our two last questions before moving to our open question section. So does being good at remote work make me more employable? What do you think, Jonathan?
Yes. Oh, you want me to do more? All right.
Yeah, why not?
Let's be clear. There are managers at the moment who do not see the opportunities which are being provided by remote working. They still think working from home is a soft touch. They exist. They're wrong, but they exist. And we have to be careful when we're putting together the positive case to understand and to retain that. One of the people who I admire a lot is Catherine Granger, who, she's in political life now, semi-political life, but she was an oars woman, and she didn't start rowing until she was about 17 or 18, and then she went to great success as an Olympic person. Now, what she says is, in facing these situations, pick yourself up, dust yourself down, and do something. And what's important from an employer's point of view, when we're looking to people who we want to work remotely and they want to work remotely, is what are you going to do? I don't worry too much whether you're passionate about my business or you are tremendous at Slack or whatever. What are you actually going to do in terms of your daily work? So when we're talking about that at an interview, that is the important side of things. And I think remote work doesn't change things, but it does kind of enhance that capacity to get on and do something.
Thank you. And our last question before going to the open section. How can we design a resume and a LinkedIn profile that is remote work friendly? Anne, what are your thoughts on these?
I mean, I guess the first thing is for our audience to do it, because quite a lot of, do it full stop, because quite a lot of, certainly the women that I've worked with feel very unsure about doing that, particularly if they've had a career break. And actually there are ways of doing it, like taking the dates out, actually, as Jonathan's just said, actually what you are able to, what you need to persuade an employer is that, you're able to meet the objectives of that organization. And most employers, frankly, I mean, I've learned this myself. I was 10 years out of date on my specialist field, at least 10 years out of date. Did anybody else care? No, they didn't at all. They're perfectly happy for me to go in and facilitate change programs for managers in criminal justice. And I was like, oh, I can't do that. I'm 10 years out of date. And in fact, it really doesn't matter to anybody else as long as you can, as long as you're confident that you can get the outcomes that you need for the employer. So yeah, making it remote work friendly, I guess, is just about, well, doing what you would do for in-person work and just making sure that you've got some demonstrated track. It's always good to have some demonstrated track record of how you've been able to do, how you've been able to achieve stuff via virtual means. So you've got some examples of what, where you've already achieved that, and get that into your resume. But yeah, my basic tip is, bite the bullet and get on to LinkedIn if you're not on it.
Excellent, thank you. Well, Ed, leave it to you to bring some questions from the audience.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Mirta. And I guess before I jump into the questions, I just wanted to reflect a tiny bit on some of what I've heard in the last, 45 minutes, which I think will resonate particularly strongly with the audience and certainly resonates with me. Femi, I think, your point about increasing flexibility from employers is a great one. And I'd probably even encourage pushing that a step further. So many employers that think they are unable to offer flexibility found themselves in a position in the last 2 years when they just had to, and they got on with it. So actually, if people are applying for a job that is otherwise totally perfect for them, they're a good fit, they've got the skills, they love it, and they're feeling good about it, then just go for it. And, once you've got the offer, say, by the way, I will only be able to visit your head office once a month. I assume that's fine. It's not going to affect my ability to do the job, et cetera, et cetera. So I think, really exactly what you said, and, encouraging them to push that flexibility even further. You also made that great point on sort of self-awareness and like what success looks like, and definitely something that I 100% agree with, right through to my bones, and would encourage all of our audience to really think about what that is, and whether that's just getting through the day, balancing everything, or what it looks like in a few weeks' time or a few months' time. Absolutely loved it. Jonathan, I thought your point on that diversity of thought and how important it is to bring another angle is really, really relevant. I'd love to, in a minute, in maybe one of my questions, if I'm allowed one, sort of unpack how we can let that show through in an interview or even on a CV in a definitely positive way. Just so you're not sort of, maybe you've got an employer that you catch them in a conservative mindset, and the way you've phrased it in your CV or in your interview is just pushing their boundaries too far on the, I have a diverse range of thoughts and I'm coming to your organization to shake things up. Any recommendations on that? We can go into that in a minute, but also thanks very much for the really tangible example of Edinburgh and Madrid. I think that, it's really useful for our attendees to hear what that might look like in practice. Could you have childcare for 1 week every 6 months from family or friends, quite possibly, right? Or quite possibly in the future. So that's really good to just get everybody thinking that type of working is possible. And to Anne, I love the phrase digital sunset, so I might just actually steal that one myself, if that's all right. Really the participants haven't yet had their CV workshops, but I think we'll definitely be drilling home that importance of just tangible examples on their resume, and making sure that they break down what they have previously achieved. So I just wanted to bring up those few points that struck me as we were going through. What I would love is if each of you, had a particular story that might resonate with the audience, about someone or yourselves or someone who's maybe participating in your programs or in your companies who has had those challenges and has approached them. Anything particular that struck you about the way they approached the challenges or the mindset, or just any nice stories? I know it's a bit of a cheat, but I've had loads of great stories from Femi, as we've brainstormed about things. So if each of you had a particular story you'd like to share, that would be absolutely lovely.
Sure.
Yeah, Jonathan, go for it.
Working with young women from the Middle East brings a context which is different from that I've experienced before. And so we have grown enormously working with women from an Islam background who have a different weekend, little practical thing, but also how they interact with us as females, and we are men, and how all that works. And I cannot tell you the extent to which our learning has grown. I can't overestimate that. In the situation that I'm thinking about particularly, the young woman herself enjoyed the internship enormously. It really worked. This kind of one-to-one stuff, working within the network and so on, really worked and brought out what she was quite comfortable to admit was to allay some of the fears that she had in working in a Western atmosphere, but also working herself with her own levels of self-confidence. So much so that when she left the internship and went into work, she found it very difficult again. She found that interaction in the Middle East to be very difficult, and in fact stopped doing it. Came back and is now working with us on a part-time basis and doing other jobs on a part-time basis. A very profound cultural and personal change went on, both for her and for me.
Thank you very much. Really interesting, and actually touches on the idea of a portfolio career as well, the idea that you could do something part-time and mix and match with perhaps another piece of work for a different company. But yeah, I guess that actually speaks to our question in the Q&A from Karatumu, who has said, would you advise someone working remotely for their life? So in Jonathan's case, and clearly sounds like it depends on the person, but I think we can say that if you feel more comfortable in a remote environment and you've tried it out extensively, then it can definitely work. Thank you so much for that story, Jonathan. I think it's really, really valuable to hear that. Femi, have you got any story that you'd like to share?
I think I've been working with a program of not women returners, but for quite a long time I've worked with people trying to get into an industry that is very different to their background. So for example, public relations is quite white, it's quite middle class, and to get in an internship in it can be quite terrifying even if you're successful. And what's happened over the last 2 years is it's been remote internships, which I think getting into an industry that you want to be in but has considerable barriers, a remote way in can feel safer, can give you more confidence, and also give you time to think about situations that you may come into later. And also it's given employers maybe who thought that they couldn't work with certain groups of people because that they had a kind of mental barrier. I think Black Lives Matter has made that a little bit different. It's made them think that actually, even though it shouldn't be, a virtual relationship can feel safer for them as well in terms of working with people who are completely different. Rather than just think, these are not the type of people that I normally think of. I'm used to a particular type of person, whether it be white, middle class, person who is economically quite robust. Now I'm working with people who, here's my person with wearing her hijab. I'm having that one-to-one relationship with this person. Maybe I wouldn't have done that previously. So I think my experience working with these young people is online. I think that they can have a confidence about them that they may not have had they had all the hassle of dealing with the bigger politics of an organization. So that has kind of made me happy. And it's also some of the employers that have contacted me and said, oh, I want to be involved with different types of people. As I say, that virtual door can be sometimes easier to go through than the physical door that they've been thinking about previously. So I probably, this is not my best anecdote, but just thinking about it globally, I do think for the young people that I've been working with, I do a session with them, a couple of times a year. I think that, as I say, I sometimes note a confidence about them that I maybe didn't see kind of previously, because they were using their energies to deal with the kind of impact of being in this very, very different environment.
Yeah, completely agree. And it's something, here at Virtual Internships, we're really trying to leverage remote work to remove the barriers that previously existed. And therefore, if the total sum of the barriers, as you say, are reduced, then hopefully there's a bit more energy and a bit more confidence when those people get in front of an employer. So if you haven't had the long commute, you haven't had the stress of working out if you're dressed properly, or how to navigate the bit where you get into work, then hopefully you can have that bit more confidence and energy when you meet your, when you talk to your colleagues or hit those tasks. So yeah, completely. Anne, any particular kind of anecdote that you wanted to share with the group?
Yeah, I think that was a really powerful one, Femi. I kind of I guess I'm helping a lot of women to overcome those kind of very real barriers to going into organizations that they don't know whether they're going to feel welcome in, and and how to get around that, and dealing along with, this sort of massive mum guilt thing that I think is probably the universal thing that women who I'm working with all have, doesn't matter what their backgrounds, they're all fighting that challenge. And certainly the reason I started what I do now was really tragic situation with a friend who completed suicide, who we were totally, we just, her circle of friends just did not understand the extent to which the challenges she was going through, and we all felt just like we massively let her down. And actually since then, working with women who are incredibly creative, incredibly productive, but are not, who are having to deal with like a real tornado of motherhood. It isn't, it is not the thing that it's the cliches have. It's a huge, there's huge challenges. And so, I've got loads of great examples of women who've, even if it hasn't happened immediately, they understand their strengths more. I've got, I hope this is going to be recorded and online, isn't it? I hope Joy, who's one of the many women I'm working with at the moment, won't mind me talking about her. She's an amazing textile designer, got incredible training and background. She's just taken a new role. She heads up something called Joy in Weaving, which I think is going to be a really exciting proposition for the future. But she's also just got a community coordinator role at something called Global Generation locally. And she's I'm not going to claim any responsibility for her journey, but she's somebody I have great admiration for in terms of gathering her strength and getting out there and doing some incredible things in her community and with the skill set that she's got. So yeah, I've got lots of those stories. We're just doing a film actually of her and a few other women who are going through, who sort of managing a range of kind of exciting opportunities. So yeah, you can see.
Oh, that's wonderful. That sounds really inspiring. I don't know if what can people search for on Google to find the film? And
you can go onto, we haven't put it out yet, but it's, if you look on my YouTube channel, which is Bloomsbury Beginnings YouTube channel, that will be there.
Wonderful. It sounds like it's going to be
like
amazing,
I'm terribly upselling here, but yeah, that's
no, it's sharing resources. And that's, I think, what speaks to me from all of those examples is the ladies who are on our program, and indeed the participants in our traditional internship programs, they're all taking those first steps, and it is a journey. They're building their own self-awareness. They're working out what will work for them, what success looks like, and we're all just here trying to signpost them and give them some encouragement along the way. And it'll be different levels of relevance at different times in their stories. And, it's all, I hope it's all really useful and resonating. I think now we're going to jump to a couple of questions. Just a reminder to anyone who is listening live, please put your questions in the Q&A or the chat, because I am turning over to those right now. So let's go back to Karatumu's question. Would you advise someone to work remotely for life? It's kind of quite a yes or no, black and white question, but given that we don't know too much about what industry Karatumu wants to go into, anyone got a kind of yes or no, or a middle answer that they'd like to give?
Depends how long your life is going to be, I think. If an older person asks me, do you think I should be working remotely for life? Yeah, why not? I think for a younger person or someone in the middle there, they need to find what works best for them. But could remote working for life be a possibility? Yes, I think it could. And I think that would not have been my answer 2 years ago.
Okay.
Can I add, in terms of if you're a youngish person, in terms of remote working for life, I think one of the things to consider is promotion, because sometimes the people who are going into the office they're in front of the managers, and the managers may be seeing more of their personality. So I think sometimes it is worth, if you get the opportunity to go in from time to time, to just check out the politics, check out who's doing what and how opportunities are shared, things like that. I mean, obviously, if it suits you to be working from home in that particular way, that's fine. But sometimes I think if you're ambitious and you want to move forward, going into the office and just seeing the territory, I think could be useful.
Yeah, I think that's really valid, Femi. And also, something that people could ask even at the interview stage or when they receive an offer is, what does the promotion track look like? What do I need to hit? And is it going to be at all affected by being remote or not? Get those answers straight, because I agree, you don't want to be in the background, on effectively the second Zoom screen with your camera off. If there's a sort of FaceTime element of promotion, that people do need to be there. So completely agree. Anne, anything to add on that?
Yeah, I mean, I just think there is a joy in being able to, when there's a, be face to face in an organization, about your own, about people recognizing your value, but it's just really enjoyable to, I managed to do a face to face big team, be part of a big team meeting of one of the organization I'm contracted with yesterday, and it was lovely. And I do think there is, when you can do that, you should build that in.
Yeah, I think, again, for every individual, just to recognize, be self-aware and see if you're someone who really does get a lot of energy from in-person meetings or in-person events, and you channel that, then knowing that about yourself will most likely allow you to make better decisions about job opportunities and remote working. So Great. And now on to something a bit more practical. Lynette, who is one of our success stories from the Women Returners program, got an offer about week 2.5, I think. Lynette has been offered a remote role and is starting in a few weeks and is planning to make adjustments to her home. And she doesn't have a designated spare room or office. Do you have any suggestions as to how you adapted your physical working environment to something that was both practical for you and acceptable to an employer? Any top tips to ensure you work most effectively on a budget? And even more specific, was there sort of something equipment-wise that you bought or invested in that really helped you adapt? Great question, Lynette. And anyone feel free to just jump in, put up your hand. I won't pick you.
I'm not good on equipment and things. I don't know how to do it best. I work from a very cheap laptop. I have good connectivity, which is more important than the quality of the hardware, and the software is usually fairly cheap. Where I am clear is in terms of what I mean by mindfulness, that when you're working in a social space which is used by other people and you get them to be quiet for one reason or another, the capacity to be aware and in the moment of that work, whether it's a piece of creative work or a piece of repetitive work that's going on in Excel, whatever it is, that capacity for mindfulness and shutting out all the rest is a key interpersonal element that I've had to adapt working in the home environment.
Yeah, I think you're right, actually, in terms of investing a decent, really strong Wi-Fi that, I know that's, making sure that your connectivity is good. And then most of us, certainly where I live, most of us don't have individual spaces to work in. So just sort of perhaps quite a few people I know put up a little screen, create, have their vision board perhaps behind their desk, something that is personal to them. At least trying to clear, I can't even say I do this, but try and clear the clutter that the rest of your household is dumping on your desk. Try to make a little space that's your own. I think that's, just push the boundaries as much as you can. And then the blur is brilliant. Just blur your background. Terrible, I say I feel differently here, and I do when I work with other women, but if I'm the blurred background is a savior. It's nice.
Thanks, Anne. And Femi, I'm particularly admiring that lovely bookcase.
She's got great background.
Yeah. Any other things that you've invested in that changed your life?
I'm lucky because I have this little study. I'm really fortunate. However, I do agree with Anne that being able to change your background on Teams or on Zoom is really, really useful. So your employer or your team, your colleagues, your team don't have to see what your environment exactly looks like. I think just having what I've done is find containers to put things in, just practical things. And I think if you have your own containers, especially if you haven't got a dedicated workspace, at least you can, if other people are using the space, you can have your containers that you can move away or that they don't disturb. So you can bring your containers in the morning or whatever time you start to your workspace and maybe take them away later on when you finish without having all your stuff disturbed. And quite a lot of the retailers, whether it be Sainsbury's or Lidl, whatever, are selling these containers that you can put your stuff in. And so they're quite safe. So you don't have your children mucking about with them or your partner or whoever, so that you can just pack stuff away at the end of the day and it can be, and then bring it back. And also, I think it makes your ownership of the space much better. You're not thinking that somebody's disturbing your stuff. And also, there are quite a few good filing systems now where you can have plastic rather than having static filing, you can get these concertina files where you can file your stuff, have it all done alphabetically or whatever other way you want to order stuff, but it's something that you can move and take away and keep safe. So I think that just having those kinds of strategies, if you haven't got a lot of space or if you're sharing the space, can be really helpful.
Brilliant. Thank you, Femi. Yeah, I think those were all great tips. I would basically second all of them. But I think good Wi-Fi connection, just so that you're feeling relatively confident that you're not going to be the weak link or the weak connection, is really good. And then having your setup however you want it with, I think the container idea is great, Femi. So thank you for that. Yeah, absolutely. I've got my background on. I've got a few tomato plants growing under a heat lamp behind me, so you don't need to see all of that clutter. So yeah, finally, unless people would like to add any more questions, we're really on the last couple of minutes, and I'll just do the question from Sandra that's in the chat, which is about, well, specifically says, can you build meaningful friendships with people who you work remotely with? In an actual work environment, there are opportunities to support colleagues in their lives. Is this transferable to remote working, or is remote working a barrier to this? And again, I mean, if there are specific examples or stories you're happy to share, that would be great. But of course, otherwise, just a general, yes or no is okay as well.
I mean, I would just say that these aren't necessarily co-workers, but the women that I'm working with who are all running different things and then collaborating, we can do that remotely, and we've done that much more successfully remotely than I would ever have considered. And talking about, the difficult people, as Femi was saying, in some senses, people can open up a little bit more sometimes in remote, because there's a certain level of safety being in your own space, isn't there? That if things get too much, you can turn your camera off. You don't actually have to physically walk out of the room. So I do think there's, there are, I mean, I love live, face-to-face stuff, but I do think you can create good, strong friendships and professional working relationships online as well, definitely.
Yeah, very much agree with you, Anne. Jonathan?
I went to a concert a couple of weeks ago where my young cousin was performing in a competition to get into the Royal Scottish Conservatoire thing. And the joy in both the audience and the performers in being in a live situation for the first time in a long time was palpable, and something that you cannot reproduce in a remote working environment. That capacity between performer and audience, that relationship. And so it is with the workplace, but I wouldn't want to over-idealize it, because a lot of the workplace is about office politics. A lot of the workplace concerns other forms of interaction which are not so great. So remote working sometimes cuts that out as well. Neither is perfect, is all I'm saying.
I would like to agree with Jonathan. I think that, as I say, I'm a people person, so I do miss interactions with seeing people and that, the whole feeling of being in the room. However, there are, as Jonathan said, the advantages of being away from some of the behaviors, the negative behaviors, some of the negative environment that can come with being in an organization. So I think it's concentrating on the positives. And I think, like anything else, because even when you go to work in person, it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to have meaningful friendships. Often people go to work and still feel quite lonely. So I think it's the effort that you put in. The same way when you're going in face to face, you have to make an effort to build those networks to your advantage. And I've for years I've been talking to students and people that I've worked with about how important it is to build meaningful relationships, and they're face to face. So I do believe that you can do this. You can do make meaningful friendships online. However, it will take an effort, just like it takes an effort to build any friendship. You have to think about what you've got to offer, what you're looking for, the type of person you want to spend time with, online or in person. So I think it's not an exact science, and I think it's all about what we want to get out of things, what we see as positive, and what is positive for us in terms of what does a meaningful friendship look like.
Thank you, Femi. What a wonderful phrase to end on and to wrap up. And we had loads more to say, but I think that's a really good point to say thank you very much to all three of you for joining this meaningful discussion. And I can see from the chat and the contributions from the audience that they've really taken quite a lot away from it, very positive. And we at Virtual Internships are incredibly grateful for your time and your content and input. It's been really, really valuable and amazing. So thank you. I hope it is okay for the audience to look you guys up on LinkedIn.
Yes.
We always, as we've said, encourage networking. And as I've mentioned to many people, but perhaps not the three of you, we have been granted a one-year extension of the Women Returners delivery. So we hope to invite you back to future panels and workshops and to be involved in this really meaningful program, which is doing great things. So I hope you might be open to that in the future.
Absolutely.
Indeed. Thank you.
I'll just end by saying, thanks, Jonathan. And a big thank you to Mirta for hosting this panel very seamlessly and making all the tech work very well. So thank you, Mirta.
Thank you, and thank you to the speakers. Thank you so much for being here today. We really enjoyed everything you shared, and well, I'm very grateful for you being here. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Wonderful. So now the participants are going to hang around to carry on work on their project. So we will just give you a big wave and a thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.